talking with Johnny Hyde about his radio career. And you came to the Golden State what year?
Golden State was about 1960, maybe, right around in there. I know that all the streets were paved with gold, and I knew that California was magic because at the time I was in Tucson, and we would listen every night to KFWB, Channel 98,
in LA,
down in Los Angeles. And I mean, there was no finer radio station at the time.
And they were top 40, right?
Right, and that was programmed by Chuck Bloor, who had programmed KTKT in Tucson prior to that. So it's like I'm following Chuck Bloor as we go along. So I came out here and ended up working in Pomona at a radio station. I didn't last long there. And I'm sure the station went on to a lot greater success. But to me, it was a miserable period of time in my life. I remember why. Because the owner, he was such a cheapskate. That,
I know an owner like that.
Yeah, he would put locks on the phone so that you weren't tempted to make an outside phone call. You know, I didn't know anybody. But
sounds like the same owner I worked for.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy things like that, you know. So, anyhow, I didn't last long there, and I came up then to Bakersfield at Quackerjack Radio, KWAC, which was being programmed by a buddy of mine from Tucson, Dan Gates. So he says, fine, you know, you can do that. And
did it ever use duck sound effects?
No.
Go along with quack?
Well, he might have.
I'm just wondering, why did they call it quack?
Because the owners thought it was funny. You know, and they had a couple of very hip owners. They were nice to get along with. Dan was a wonderful person. And that was my first inkling that you could belong to a group within a radio station that became very tight-knit at the time. So the ratings on the radio station became better and better because there was a cohesiveness between all of the jocks.
Sure.
So your
chemistry.
your program didn't end at 9 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whenever. You were just passing it on to another friend of yours who would constantly be referencing you for the next 3 hours during his radio program. So that was sort of an interesting place to work. As an aside, I made my first gaffe in radio at KWAC as I reported that there was snow that was holding up mountain traffic on the Tehachapi Mountains. All of a sudden I look outside the booth and everybody is frozen in time as they all turned, looked at me, and just cracked up. I didn't know it was Tehachapi, you know, but apparently it was in their minds, and that was my first major gaffe. The second major gaffe that I made in moving to Tucson, or to Bakersfield, was moving to a residence area called Oildale. And Oildale, come to find out, was the wife-swapping capital of America. And I just thought all these people were really being good friends and neighbors. I mean, they would take potluck over to each other. They would you just go outside and you can see all these neighbors going back and forth between each other's houses. And it wasn't until my wife at the time went with a friend of hers to Southern California on some business that I was working the morning show, went home, took a nap, and woke up with two lovely ladies, one on each side of me, welcoming me to Oildale.
Did you think it was a dream, or did you know it was real?
No, I knew that that was better than the Golden Highways. fun period of time. So anyhow, that eventually came to an end. I had an offer to move up to KYNO in Fresno.
KYNO.
Yep.
The legendary KYNO.
Lucky 13. And gee, there were some talented people who worked there. And
didn't some big names come out of there and went on to L.A.?
Well, yeah. Bob Elliott at the time became known as K.O. Bailey or K.O. Beecham or a variety of different names. And he went on to do very well at San Francisco at KFRC. The program, Les Schwann ended up to be a pretty well-renowned program director. The biggest person that came out of KYNO at that time was Bill Drake.
Sure.
And
who changed the face of radio in the mid-'60s.
He did, yes. And he changed my face and made me realize that my idea of a format and his idea were two separate things.
Okay.
And it was time for me to leave town.
He was into the really tight format, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've always been a music lover, so I enjoy more than anything else.
More than 20 songs.
Yeah, more than 20 songs. And at the same time, being able to listen to something and to find out, hey, that's a hit. It's the experience that I had just a couple of weeks ago when I heard Philip Phillips on American Idol sing Home. And I knew that was a hit record. I don't know what the charts say or anything, although I did read to where it was #1 as far as the downloaded songs on iTunes. Yeah, so, I mean, that to me is just great when you can find a song like that and you know it's a hit, you play it, you have a good time with it, and the audience follows in that direction.
And it helps it become a hit.
Yeah, Bill Drake was just not in for any of that.
Okay.
No, he wanted... As a matter of fact, we had our final blowout. I was the music director. He was the program director. And he kept insisting that I cut the playlist more and more and not take any chances. And
was this before the Beatles?
Well, it's funny that you should mention that. It is before the Beatles as you know them, but it was over a Beatles song.
We're not going to play the Beatles.
We are not going to play them. Nobody had ever heard of the Beatles.
Was it From Me to You?
No, it's She Loves You.
Okay.
And it was on Swan Records.
Okay.
And we were playing it back in 1962.
Wow.
And Bill just had nothing good to say about the Beatles, the song, or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's at that time that I sort of realized that I wasn't going to make it in Bill Drake's format. So we ended it, and he went on to be super successful.
Right.
I can't say anything against Bill. At the time, I could, but
he's who made KHJ in LA and KFRC in San Francisco huge. Right?
And even Stockton. He did, what was the radio station? He did the radio station down there.
Was that K-Hop?
No, it was...
Not STN.
KSTN.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He programmed that station also. So he did a good job. So I came up the valley, and that's where I made a crucial error. There used to be a service out of San Francisco called the Gavin Report.
Sure.
And if you want to, I will tell you on the next episode how it worked, what it worked.
I'd love to know that.
How it influenced me. Yeah, both the good and the bad.
Yeah, and the ugly.
Stand by, folks.
We'll have that coming right up with Johnny Hyde.